Welcome, Bryan, to the podcast.
Hello.
Thanks for joining me, spending an hour of your day.
Yeah.
So Bryan Beaulieu, personal friend, previous customer. If you want to tell us a little bit about how you know me and only talk about the good stuff.
Well, known you from my current and longtime job that I've had. Met you through through Robbie O'Connell's, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
How I've met, I feel like 100% of the people that I know these days.
Yeah.
Met you there many moons ago, and then just always kind of stayed in touch regardless. And then last year, almost a little, actually, just at it last year when I decided I wanted to list my house, I was like, who is the best in the area and the person that I would trust the most? And that was no question about it. It was you. So reached out to you to list my house for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's wild. It's been a year.
Yeah. It is insane that it's already been a year.
Yeah.
It is, just shy of a month. It'll be 1 year since I've sold my house. Like, not just my house, like the house I grew up in, the house that I bought from my parents, like stayed there, been there almost the vast majority of my life. And
Right.
yeah, almost a year, and
Yeah.
it's gone.
Do you miss it?
I miss aspects of home owning, not most of it at all, not to get crazy, insanely political, but for the most part, no, I don't miss owning a home in this state at all. I miss cool things like I miss my pool. I miss having not a giant, but having like a theater room. I had a 75-inch TV with the sound. I miss those things.
Yeah.
But other than that, overall, I don't miss home owning. No, not at all.
Okay.
But I'm also an outlier for most, I'd imagine.
That's true. So, okay. So where, like, you don't tell us where you live, but like, what are you doing now if you're not in a house?
I sold the house, cleared off all my debt, put a bunch of money in the bank. I bought a little used travel trailer, 22-foot travel trailer off of Facebook Marketplace. I threw it in my buddy's backyard. He's got full hookups for a camper in his backyard, and I've been living in the camper in my buddy's backyard for almost a year now.
That's so cool. Not many people could do that.
Yeah, it's a huge adjustment for sure.
Yeah.
The downsizing is insane, and you have to I don't want to say mental gymnastics, but there's quite a difference of, going from my house is 2,200 square feet to, I think my camper's less than 800 square feet. So the downsizing is insane, and just getting used to that. But when you think about what your truly needs are, what you really need versus what you want, it makes it a little easier.
It was a lot of house for you. You had what, like 4 bedrooms, 2,200 square feet, half an acre. Yeah.
It was a huge house.
Yeah.
And it was just me and my roommate, who was also never there anyway. So,
right.
But
so something you said debt free. So you're totally debt free after selling your house.
I sold my house. I paid off all my credit cards. I sunk way too much money into my truck, and I'm way over budget on that. But, I'm building a super awesome overlanding vehicle that I'm going to travel the country in, and worth every penny. But like most things, you go over budget substantially.
Yeah.
It is what it is. And I also bought 40 acres in the mountains in northern Arizona. So
very cool. Okay, so how was the experience with buying land?
It was super weird. It was definitely weird because, one, you went out there and I camped while I was looking at the land because it's all raw land. So I was camping on a buddy's property, and there's no real agents going out there because they're not driving out in the middle of nowhere to show you dirt, essentially. So you kind of left at your own whim to go do whatever you want. And then I was just really weird. And then also the fact that I was buying it from Florida and it was in Arizona. Pretty easy though. Like I said, especially, when you have a pile of cash and you say, hey, yeah, I'm buying cash. It's kind of makes things a lot simpler.
Yeah.
But,
so like the land that you bought, you most of the work that you did, like the research was from home in Florida, like.
Yeah, I knew a gentleman who lives out in that area, and he was sending me properties in that area that I wanted. So I went out there last September, and I spent about 2 weeks in the area just camping and hiking around different properties and looking at different properties and such. And found this one that I fell in love with it, but they wanted way too much money for it. So I came home and waited about 2 months, and I called them and gave them a lowball offer, and they took it.
Really?
So I gave them a lowball offer. They accepted it, which kind of did not expect. So I had to reach out to the boss real quick and say, hey, I got to go out there and do like a final walkthrough, if you will. So hopped a plane, flew out there, spent 2 or 3 days on the property, came back and closed the next week.
So it sounds like you did a lot of it yourself. Did you have a realtor? Or did
No, for
Okay.
the property, no. It was I basically went direct because there's not really, I don't know. I think because I dabbled in real estate for a half a second way back when. I didn't want to. There's no commission based. The property was so
Right.
cheap. It wasn't. I don't want to ruin somebody else's thing from taking their bringing another realtor to cut in. So I just went direct to the realtor. And stuff.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So do you feel like did selling your house here in Ormond, like is that what opened the door to like the Arizona property and like buying all that stuff for your truck and
Yeah.
do you feel like it created opportunity for you?
100%, absolutely. Not to get crazy political, but I don't see homeownership in this state getting any easier or beneficial to anybody anytime soon. And where I was at in the house, again, way too much house for one person to begin with. It was just getting, it was probably only a few more years before it would have been unaffordable for myself at the rate things were going. But I bought at the right time and I sold at the right time.
You really did.
Yeah, typical boomer move. And it worked out perfectly for me, honestly. I was very, very fortunate for the situation that I was able to find myself in. So.
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about like when in the listing process, we talked a lot about homeowners insurance because that's a nightmare. Like everybody knows that.
Yeah.
You have property taxes and like all the expenses that come with homeownership.
Yeah.
And of course, like it's my job to sell homeownership, right? Like it's how I make a living. But at the same time, I try to be super honest and like transparent with people. And I know like it can be tough.
Yeah.
And I know it was tough and all these things. And like, so let's touch on homeowners insurance, if you don't mind, just because I know we could go on forever about your specific situation, but I mean, was that like a huge driving factor for you for selling?
1,000,000% a driving factor for me.
I've had 4 people just this year that have called me to sell their house because they can no longer afford their mortgage because of their insurance alone.
My last escrow shortage was short almost $5,000 because of the homeowner's insurance alone.
That's insane.
Yeah, absolutely insane. And it was. I'm not saying don't go buy a house, everybody. Buy a house if you can afford it. But the problem was when I bought my house, I could afford it, and by the time I sold my house, insurance had become so outstanding that I couldn't afford it, and I had to go with the state-backed citizens.
Right.
Which is fine. I'm not bashing that by any means. It's just there should be some other option or something. But that's neither here nor there. Go buy a house.
But that's like something that I think maybe could have been explained to you years ago that was a possibility. I think there's a lot of agents who don't do a good job explaining like that your taxes are going to go up, your insurance is going to go up, and that your mortgage doesn't necessarily always stay the same.
I think that, but we're here now. I think what's going on in Florida with property insurance is a whole outlier of what's going on anywhere else. I mean, Florida just became the most expensive state to live in a couple months ago, or maybe a couple weeks ago. I saw it somewhere. And it's got a lot to do with the home insurance.
What I have heard, and I believe it to be true, like at least in Florida, is a couple years ago we had all like the door knocking, like roofing salesmen and things like that, and they were partnered up with attorneys, and they were allowed to go say, "Oh, we had like a quick hailstorm, like you need a new roof," and and instead of a reasonable $15,000 or $18,000 roof, it was like I had one that was $94,000.
Yeah.
Through a door knocker who had an in-house attorney, and it was like it was crazy.
Yeah.
So I think I know the legislature changed there. About a year ago, they changed it to where that's illegal. You're not allowed to do that anymore. So that's like what they're trying to make it better, but it's still not there yet. So
no, the insurance in the state has a very, very long way to go.
Yeah.
And I just, I saw my out, I took my ball and I went home.
Yeah.
So that's how that went for me. But
and you bought at a really good time and you sold at a really good time. Like you sold at that point where it was like everybody wanted to sell because it was like, oh, I think this is the peak, and it really was for you. It took a little bit of time because I think we were right at the end of that height. But okay, so let's talk about selling your house and how that went.
Go.
So I know that you had used a couple people right before me.
Yeah, I did for sale by owner. I did myself. And then I hired.
You don't have to say names, but we can just say.
Yeah, and the thing was, when I was for sale by owner, he was a hustler, go getter, and he's a sweet kid, really, really sweet kid. I think way too green needed more guidance. But I was like, you know what? He's a sweet kid and he's a hustler. He called me, not every day. He was the perfect line of not annoying the hell out of me, doing for sale by owner, but just, I honestly felt like he was literally just checking in with me.
Right.
I had a few for sale by owner hunters who were like at the point where like I told the one guy, I go, bro, if you worked as hard to find me a buyer as you did to get my listing, I go, I would have sold my house by now.
Right.
And he didn't like that, but I wasn't wrong either.
It's true.
But no, this kid, he worked it perfect. He just, hey man, just reaching out, doing, and I was like, you know what? I go, you're you're a young kid, you're a hustler. I'm going to give you an opportunity. And I gave him the opportunity and we had a few listings, but he pissed me off really bad one time. And because I'm a little bit of a pig-headed, I'm stubborn. I felt that he was trying to pull one over on me and it pissed me off and it just ruined the rest of the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah. The deal he worked out was way better for him and the buyer than it was for me. And, I had dabbled in real estate before. I did it for like 8 months. So I knew what the deal was. I knew what the kid was trying to do and I called him out.
Right.
And it was downhill after that.
Right.
Yeah. I was like, well, now I can't trust you.
Yeah. And we kind of talked about that because while it was listed, we were still kind of chatting. And at one point, I think you said like, it's hard to blur the lines between like a personal friend and a business relationship. And you know how you are. And I think you were a little worried about like, what if something went south and like it hurt our friendship. And I think like, I've heard that from more than just you. I've heard that from a couple people. Oh, I wanted to use a stranger because I cherish our friendship and things like that. And usually people end up coming back to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It happened to me.
Right. So like, how did you feel it was different using like a friend versus a stranger to sell your house?
I think it's a lot more relaxing in a sense. Like you're not on pins and needles. You're not all stressed out, anxiety ridden like a little dog. And it was smooth. I mean, I'm not trying to gas you up, but you're awesome. You're, in my opinion, you are the best in the area for a reason. And that's why I went with you. Like, I'm not saying that because I'm sitting here on your podcast. That's 100% why I went with you. And nothing felt like forced or there was no bad juju or bad vibes or like, you get some people and realtors are, I can say this because I did real estate for a few months. Realtors as a whole are kind of swarmy, snaky individuals. They're like car salesmen who sell larger items. That's
right.
it. And again, not to gas you up, but you're not that. You are a person, you genuinely care about everybody that you're working with and it shows.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes. And I knew that going in, but to your point, I did have that, like, I don't want to use a friend. I don't want to use somebody I know. I did have that. And this kid, again, I'm also, equal opportunity kind of guy. I'm like, let's give this young kid a shot. He's a hustler. And again, he fucking tried to burn me. And I knew it. And I was like, oh, you're done now, homie. Because now, and the worst part is it was actually a pretty decent offer looking back. But also he was trying to pull one over for him and his buyer rather than look out for me.
Right.
And I'm a fuck you kind of guy. So that's where I was at after that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like working with you as a friend, like I like working with my friends because kind of like you said, I feel like I can be more honest and transparent and like more myself and all those things. Like, so tell me a little bit about like how you felt about the listing process from like the time you decided to work with me to like pricing and we sat in your dining room and like figured out all of our numbers and the closing process and all the things.
Again, not to just gas you up, but I think because we did have the prior relationship, I think it felt every aspect about it was easier. And there was it was seamless, easier, however you want to put it. It just felt comfortable. Okay. That makes more sense. Again, it didn't feel like I was trying to go work with like a used car salesman or go work with somebody I didn't know where you're kind of like, I don't know this person, you hold back a little bit, one of those kind of things. It was just like, okay, I know Gina. I've known Gina forever. And it just felt super comfortable and natural. It was nice. It was 100% would recommend going with somebody that always, all of the time, for sure. Especially possibly the biggest deal of your life. You know what I mean? A lot of times buying and selling a home is the biggest purchase of somebody's life. So yeah, go with somebody that you know and trust and is going to make you feel comfortable with it.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And I know it was hard to price your house, right? Like
Yeah.
You and I talked about pricing a lot, and you had priced it a couple different ways, a couple different times, and like what is on the internet lives on the internet forever.
Yeah.
So we had to kind of be cognizant of that. Your house is super large on an abnormally large lot. Like you had all these things that went into pricing. So like, how do you feel like the pricing process went?
The pricing, I mean, aside from the fact that, because, you know, not to gas myself up, but I had the only lot in that Ormond Terrace area that is like that.
Right.
I think aside from being a pain to find a lot that we could get a decent comp off of, pricing process was great. I mean, super transparent with it. You know what I mean? You're like, yeah, your house is great and all this stuff, but you know, you didn't need a roof at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was, you know, it was definitely dated, stuff like that. But no, pricing process was really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think the problem was finding comps because my property was such a one-off would have been the biggest issue. But pricing process was awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So we talked a little bit about you were in real estate. You said for 8 months.
Yes.
Okay.
8,
So
10, whatever it was. Yeah.
you tell us about that. So you were, I understand you were on a team,
Correct.
right? With like a large brokerage.
Yeah.
Tell us about like how that was and like how you felt and kind of.
I think my personal opinion, I think I got into real estate too late in life, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're a young 20-something-year-old hustler and you're a go-getter, blah, 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 I think real estate, do it, kill it, make all the money in the world. My problem is I got in it. I'm old. I was older. You know, I'm older now.
You're not old.
Yeah. And, you know, I realized what my free time is worth. And I don't think a lot of people, when it comes to realtors, I don't think a lot of people realize how much time is spent doing the job. And I know what my time is worth to me personally. And I fucking hated wasting my time.
Mm-hmm.
Hated wasting my time. And that was probably my biggest issue with doing the real estate was wasted time. And it is constantly.
So what kind of things like were happening in your real estate career that made you feel like we're wasting your time?
Just chasing down leads, running down leads all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I worked, and you can't control all of them, but you know, I had one, I use an example all the time. I worked with this couple that were going to move down from Pennsylvania for almost 6 months. And then 6 months after dealing with them every weekend when they would come down from Pennsylvania to look at houses, once a week I would go over to the West Volusia to show them houses, do virtual tours through FaceTime with them. After 6 months of doing that, they decided they didn't want to move. And it's just like,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
You get none of that back. You weren't paid for any of that. That's, you know, that's your Friday, Saturday, Sunday on the weekends when they're down here. And that's your, you know, your Tuesday afternoon driving over to Deltona and DeLand to do virtual tours for them.
Yeah.
And, you know, great people, love them. But, you know, I got the old, we'll recommend you if we have anybody move down here. And I'm like, cool, that doesn't pay for my gas or anything. So,
Right.
yeah, there's a lot of that. Just a lot of door kickers. And the other one that the one that it still burns me up is the wife doom scrolling Zillow and wondering why you didn't send her that house through the automated MLS. And it's like, well, because that house doesn't meet any of your criteria.
Right.
But, you know, these people it's their house. They want to go see it. So you wake up at 8 a.m. on a Sunday to go show them this house, you know, they're not going to like for them to get there. And the wife to go, I don't like it. Well, yeah, no shit. It wasn't in the auto-populated list I sent you through the MLS. Of course you don't like it. So there's a ton of that too.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So, okay. Yeah. There's a lot about like this job.
Be nice to your realtors, people.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot about this job that people don't realize.
Oh,
right?
so much.
Yeah. Like there's so many people who think we just like open the door and close deals and make money.
Just take photos and then I just put them on the internet and I write a cutesy little thing about it.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of time that goes into it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's hard work because I think roofing is hard work. You know, masonry is hard work. It's a lot of work.
Right.
Not hard. It's just time consuming and it can be a little anxiety ridden.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But,
you're in the AC, but you're working 24/7.
Yeah. That phone does not, phone don't stop.
Right.
You know, the phone does not stop. And you'll have some people say, oh, well, set aside 2 hours of your day for your me time. And I'm like, well, if that phone rings in my me time, that answer is going to have to come whether I answer it now or when my 2 hour me time is up. So why not just answer the question now and get it done with?
And if you don't answer, they're just going to call someone else that answers.
Somebody will answer it who will answer their phone.
Right.
Exactly.
And then all that time that you spent working on the lead, like it's a wasted opportunity.
Right.
Yeah. So you were on a team, and did they give you leads, or did you have to go procure your own leads, or a combination?
It was, well, I brought probably a third of my leads with me, maybe a little more, but they sent me leads and I brought my own leads as well.
Okay.
But I mean, just, I'm Mr. Popular, so I know a bunch of people who wanted to sell and or buy homes.
Right.
At the time. So I was lucky.
Do you feel like, as a new agent, did you feel like joining a team was worth it, or worth whatever split that you had to pay the team lead? Like, do you feel like being on a team was worth it to you? And I know every team's a little different, but
I don't know. I go back and forth sometimes. There's some, and that's the thing. I'll say this: if you're a new realtor, go shop yourself, know your worth, and shop yourself around.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go with the first person that comes up necessarily. There are a few times where I was like, I'm definitely worth way more than this when it comes to the splits and stuff like that. But there were also times where I was like, okay, yeah, I'm super happy with that.
Mm-hmm.
But those were also the super easy deals, and most deals aren't super easy.
Right.
Like, how often do you have a smooth deal go through?
Mm-hmm.
I would assume probably almost never.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I would definitely say shop yourself around, know your worth, shop yourself around, talk to as many realtors, and whether it's a team or a brokerage or you have a coach or whatever you do, definitely do your research on that. That's kind of where I might have faulted myself a little bit.
Yeah. So like, I've thought about starting a team before. I have a lot of people that reach out and ask me like, hey, will you coach me, and things like that. Yeah. And at my previous job at the hospital, I had like 34 employees, and that's the only aspect of the job that I really missed, was like mentoring and coaching and having people that I could, like, you know what I mean? I could watch, from start to finish, watch them grow and things like that. And I've thought really long and hard about starting a team. And like, I'm wondering from your perspective, like, what advice would you give me as a team lead, coming from a new agent?
Coming from a new agent, patience.
It's a good one.
Yeah, be super patient. Go over everything a dozen times. Whether no matter how exhausted you are of going over it, go over it 10 more times.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a gorilla. I'm a slow learner. Like, I have to do things multiple times. Stuff like that. Just be patient with your new agents and go over things multiple times. You are, when it comes to stuff like this, you're going to have to hold hands quite a bit.
Right.
Definitely, I will say this: you got to make yourself available all the time, and that especially you got people working for you, so that you got to be available constantly.
Right.
On top of the deals that you're working and stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah, be available and be very, very patient and gentle with your mentees, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have do you feel like you had a training process? Like, were you trained on like contracts and like all of that?
I mean, we sat there and went through it. I wouldn't say it was like a training per se, but we sat there and went down and went over it. I mean, it's kind of autofill, plug and play kind of thing. It's more of I don't want to keep saying outliers, the random stuff that comes up, and you're like, well, what do I do? Like, how do I handle this? And like, you got to be able to be like, cool, hey, I'm calling you, I don't know, this X thing. A perfect example. Hey, our buyer just broke into the house and moved all their stuff in, even though they don't own the house yet. And then the owner came in and threw it all away. What do we do?
Right.
You need to be there for that phone call.
Which sounds wild, but like, things like that actually happen.
That was a thing that happened.
Oh my God.
It's tricky being a team lead. I think it's a lot more work as well than other people, than people realize. So, you have yourself, and then you have everybody underneath you. So, and then you're trying to mentor. It's a lot of work to be a team lead for sure. Why don't you just start your own brokerage?
A lot of people ask me that, honestly. I think like there's a lot of liability and there's a lot of cost. There's a lot of things that go with being your own broker and opening up your own business. I think like there's a step in between that I'm sort of trying to aim for. And that's like, I'm a solo agent. I don't quite think I'm like at a position in my career where I want to own a brokerage. Yeah. But in between is having a team, right? And like having like listing agents, buying agents, administration, like having people under, not, I hate to say under me, but like people that work with me that can help me, and I can help them and things like that. So that's the ultimate goal, at least for right now. Like the 1 to 2 year goal is have a team, build that team, see how I like that sort of like aspect. And then maybe one day that, you know, that will happen. But
Fair enough. It is a ton of work.
yeah.
I will definitely say that is being a team lead is a ton of work. Again, you have all your leads, and then you have everybody else's leads, and you have to, and then also you have to produce as the team lead. Like you have to make sure that your people are getting leads.
Yeah.
As well.
That's
it's a lot of work. I'm not discrediting that whatsoever. It is a ton of work.
Yeah.
So again, if you're doing all that, you might as well start your own brokerage.
Yeah. One day I will, for sure. And I thought about that too. So like my level of volume right now is like it sustains me, and there's excess to where I could give it away to a buyer's agent or whoever. But then I think like I need to make sure that I'm at a volume of sales where I can guarantee that I'm fulfilling myself and also able to give someone else what they need to sustain their, you know, their bills, and they have, you know, they have lives too. So, but yeah, that's definitely the goal. And then sort of incorporating like with what I'm doing with the podcast and my shorts and things like that, like educating new realtors. So once they do decide to join real estate, maybe they will come work with me and they're already kind of prepped. Yeah. And they already feel like they kind of know me because of my content and things like that. So that's the goal.
Makes sense.
So we talked about this a little bit before, but like you were an agent, you did for sale by owner. Mm-hmm. You used that guy, you ended up using me, we sold your house. So like what is your, you were a licensed agent selling your own house, like what is your perspective on for sale by owner versus using an agent? And the reason I ask is I hear a lot like there's this stigma with realtors, right? That we're like not worth what we make, and we make too much money, and I can't believe you pay that much. Like, why don't you just sell it by yourself? Like, what's your perspective on?
I mean, as somebody who was an agent, and I mean, I had all the support of all of my agent friends. I mean, I had, I'm a fairly popular individual, and it still couldn't sell my own house. Mm-hmm. I mean, I had a buddy who's a phenomenal photographer. He came and he took all my listing photos. I mean, I did it as if I was an agent, but I still did it for sale by owner, and I still couldn't sell my house. Get an agent, sell your house, have an agent sell your house, suck it up, take it on the chin, hire realtor people.
So what do you feel like limited you? Like what limited you as a for sale by owner versus when you used?
Not for sale by owner, one, not having access to the MLS. That's first and foremost. Obviously, that's a huge one. But still, I just, you guys have your own channels and stuff like that. It's just, you get way more, access. Yeah, there's more access to your property if you go with a realtor.
Right.
That's all. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, like I said, I tried it. I was a realtor. I tried it myself. Again, I had all my realtor friends were sharing it. All my realtor friends were doing this. I mean, I offered a 2.5% commission to a buying agent. I mean, I did everything you were supposed to do, and I still couldn't get my house sold for sale by owner. Mm-hmm. So they've just, you guys got that jazz or whatever it is, but there's no denying that you need a realtor, and they put you in the proper channels that you need to sell your house. It is what it is.
So like at the end of the day, you felt like whatever money you spent on an agent was 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I wish I would have got an agent instead of even doing my for sale by owner thing. Mm-hmm. Truthfully, yeah, I wish I would have hired you from Jump Street instead of trying to do I think I did for sale by owner for like 2 months before I went with that kid. Mm-hmm. And if I would have put you on way before that, I would have sold my house infinitely sooner. Oh, not a doubt in my mind. Yeah, for sure.
So now that your house is sold, what's like? I know you bought the property in Arizona.
Yeah.
You did you bought your truck, you bought your camper, like you did all these things, paid off your debt, which is great.
Yeah.
So like have you thought about ever buying a house again, or?
I've been looking at buying either a rental property or a investment property or some sort, or maybe even buying a house. But one, interest rates are still too high, I think, in my opinion. Sorry.
It's okay.
But also that new thing with that NAR lawsuit or whatever that is super. I've read up a bunch about it, and I'm still not actually really sure how that works into being a buyer as a real estate buyer myself. So I don't know. It's kind of sketched me out a little bit, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. So
I don't understand it. So
Yeah, and it's still new, so I think a lot of us are still learning.
Yeah.
But essentially, like, so there was a group of sellers that came together, and they felt like the fact that they had to, which they didn't. It's always negotiable. Commissions are always and always have been negotiable.
Yeah.
But anyway, they felt like it was inflating the price of the home because they had to pay 2 agents instead of 1. And in almost half the other states, it's already this way. So like it should have been this way in Florida. We're just now catching up. We're a little behind. But essentially, we have to now it was supposed to start in July. It might be August or pushing it back. There's a lot of unknowns. But essentially, your buyer, before you show them a property, they have to sign something called a buyer broker agreement that says, I'm committing to working with you as my broker or my agent for this amount of time. It can be property specific. It cannot be property specific, but essentially it's an agreement. And it's nice for me. It's nice for agents because now we finally have a commitment from a buyer, right? Like you were talking about how you worked with that person for 6 months and then they just blew you off, right?
Yeah.
Like, so that's less likely to happen if you have like a written commitment from somebody. It doesn't cost them any money. Like there's probably some brokers out there who are going to ask for a retainer. That's not my gig. I'm not going to do that, but we'd legally have to have people sign that they are going to work with us. And then second to that is that if the seller decides that they aren't going to pay the buyer's broker, that they will.
Yeah.
So that could be like an additional cost. Like for you as an example, if you called me like, hey Gina, I decide I want to buy an investment property. You got to sign this piece of paper that says, hey, if the seller of 123 Main Street doesn't pay Gina, Bryan has to pay Gina, right? So that makes it more expensive and it just makes it less affordable to buy a house, I think. But like there's still sellers that will pay it. You can, as a buyer, you can still ask the seller to pay it. You can work it into your loan with closing costs or whatever. There's all kinds of ways to do it, but it's definitely a huge change for buyers. So that's something just to, at least as a buyer, to be aware of, but also know that like you need to work with a realtor who understands that they can still try to save you that 2 or 3% or whatever it ends up being. So I wouldn't stop it from buying an investment property, but it's something you should talk about.
It was like because I feel like that all happened so fast too. Like I saw a headline about it, and then it like
that's
and
the
I was
thing.
like, oh, and there in all the articles that I read, it was never really explained or expanded upon about what exactly it was. It was just, and it was almost, the articles were almost kind of demonizing as well.
Yeah, and they've really made realtors look bad.
Yeah,
and
for
that's
sure.
the thing. Like the headlines were like, no more 6%, and it's like, well, they were never really 6%. It's never been a standard. Like it might have been customary that you paid 6%, but there's people who charge 8%. There's people who charge 2%. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so like for me, I just try to have like packages. Like I'll be like, okay, like if you want the whole kit and caboodle, you want the videography, you want multiple MLS exposure, like this is my price. But if you just want me to throw on the MLS and you don't need professional pictures and you don't want any of that, like, like then you can kind of shave off some of that. But that's the thing. Like the news headlines came out and made it seem like realtors were we were all sharky and we were all like, you know what I mean? Like smoke and mirrors, but that's not the truth.
Sounds like the media.
Yeah, for sure.
So with an investment property, what is because I've never bought one. I had a home, then I sold it, and now I live in a travel trailer like a redneck. What is how do you go about? Is it the same for an investment property as it would be for a regular home, like a primary residence, or what is different about it? More down payment or what?
So the process of buying an investment property is the same as buying a primary. You still are going to hire a realtor, look at the property, put an offer in, get an inspection. If you have a loan process, appraisal, survey, all those things. Same thing as when you bought your house for primary. The differences are mostly financial. So they usually require a higher down payment. Primary loans they can be 3%, 5%, whatever. Investment is usually, the lowest I've ever seen is 10%. Usually 15, 20, 25% down. So it's more money down.
Okay.
And that's
Like
because
you're saying down, I was thinking interest.
more money down. Oh, no, not interest down.
Yeah.
So yeah, more money down because it's a higher risk to the bank, right? Like if you're going to default on one of the two houses, it's going to be the investment house. Your interest rate's usually a little higher. Recently, I've seen them 0.75% or 1% higher than primary.
Okay.
Same reason, more
that sounds
risk.
terrible.
And then I think the only other financial aspect that's different is going to be your taxes. So you don't get a homestead break. So you're paying full taxes, property taxes, that is, on an investment property. So there's like some differences, but overall, like the process is the same.
Okay.
And then there's like some different loan types that are newer for investment properties specifically, where you don't actually have to prove any income, which is really nice. Especially for people like who are bartenders or servers, and they don't have like that consistent like salary
That was a
paycheck.
huge issue when I was purchasing my house, was the showing cash. Too much cash. Yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah. And they don't like cash deposits. And you're like, well, that's how I get paid, you know? So there's a loan. It's new, but it's awesome. Actually, it's called DSCR. And it's specifically for investment properties. It's usually like 25% down is about the average, but they don't look at your income. They're only looking at the rentability of the property. And that can be short-term, long-term. So if it already has a tenant in it, it's the easiest deal in the world because they just pull the rent and make sure it pays your mortgage.
Yeah.
And you can even buy a vacant property with DSCR because they just look up what it could rent for.
Okay.
And that's it. Like you don't have to prove any income. As long as you have the money down in the credit, you can buy a house. So that's something I've been doing a lot of lately for investors.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like a little life hack that
Yeah.
a lot of people don't know about. So you could do that.
SCR.
DSCR.
DSCR.
Yep. So life hack.
All of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me know if you want to buy a house.
I do.
I feel like we've talked about it a lot. And it's nice to have you here because you have like so many different perspectives, like the agent perspective, you have the seller perspective, you've worked with me as a customer. So I appreciate you spending your couple hours with me and all of your insight.
It was a pleasure. It was, like I said, it was a whirlwind for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lot of things. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.